Fix them, hero, Clara Whitmore said, and 12 broken cars rolled off the flatbeds like a joke the whole street had been invited to laugh at. The first tow truck arrived just after sunrise, its amber lights flashing across the frost on Ethan Walker's mailbox, then another came, and another, until his narrow gravel driveway was boxed in by dented sedans, rusted pickups, dead batteries, cracked windshields, and engines that coughed like they had given up years ago. Chains clattered against steel. Tires scraped over loose stone. Somewhere across the road, a neighbor's phone lifted to record, and a boy on a bike whispered, "Man, they really did it." Ethan opened the front door with one hand still dusted in pancake flour, because 5 minutes earlier he had been standing at the stove making breakfast for his daughter. Lily Walker stood behind him in her socks, clutching a stuffed rabbit by one ear, her blonde hair messy from sleep and her eyes wide with the kind of fear children try to hide when adults are watching. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we in trouble?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at the 12 cars first, then at the black SUV parked clean and shining at the curb, then at the woman stepping out of it like she owned the morning. Clara Whitmore was dressed in a cream coat that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage payment, her heels pressing into the soft mud beside his driveway, her face calm, polished, and cold. Behind her stood Grant Mercer, smiling like a man who had already counted the humiliation as profit. "Mr. Walker," Clara called, holding up a white envelope between two manicured fingers. "My staff tells me you're the miracle mechanic everyone talks about. So I brought you miracles." A few people laughed. Not loudly at first, but enough. Enough for Lily to step closer to her father. Enough for Ethan's jaw to tighten once before it relaxed again. Clara walked to the nearest car, a red coupe with a missing bumper and a hood tied down with rope, and slapped the envelope onto it. 12 dead cars, she said. No keys for some of them. No guarantees. No excuses. Fix them, and maybe I'll admit small-town legends can be useful. Grant chuckled. Or we tow them back and call it what it is. Ethan looked at him. What's that? Grant's smile widened. A man learning his limits. The street went quiet for half a breath, just long enough for the cold wind to move through the bare maple branches and rattle the old porch light above Ethan's door. Ethan felt Lily's hand slip into his. Small fingers. Warm palm. The only audience that mattered. He crouched slightly and spoke without taking his eyes off Clara. "Lily, go inside, sweetheart." "But Daddy, it's all right." "Are they being mean?" Ethan turned then, and his voice softened in a way that made the laughter behind the phones feel smaller. "No, baby. Someone just dropped off second chances." Lily blinked, confused, but she obeyed, easing back into the house and closing the door until only a thin line of yellow kitchen light remained. Ethan stepped off the porch in worn work boots and moved slowly down the driveway. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't perform anger for the cameras. He walked from car to car, touching fenders, checking frames, noticing what others missed, a rare trim badge under peeling paint, an original carburetor beneath a cracked hood, a VIN plate that had been wiped but not destroyed. Clara watched him with the faint irritation of a woman whose insult had failed to land properly. "You're awfully quiet," she said. Ethan stopped at the 12th car, a dust-covered black fastback sitting crooked on a flat tire. Near the lower grille, almost hidden beneath grime, was a small silver emblem shaped like a W inside a gear. His breath changed, not much, but enough. He wiped the emblem with his thumb, and the morning seemed to hold still around him. Clara folded her arms. "Well?" Ethan looked back at her, calm as sunrise over a wrecking yard. "These cars aren't dead." Grant scoffed. "They're scrap." Ethan's eyes returned to the emblem, and for the first time, something old and buried moved behind them. "No," he said quietly. "They're abandoned." Then he lifted the envelope from the hood, opened it, and saw the faded inventory tag at the bottom, Whitmore Motors Founder Edition. The joke had arrived at his door on 12. Broken wheels, but hidden inside the last one was the beginning of a truth Clara Whitmore was not ready to hear. For most of Maple Ridge, Ethan Walker was just the man people called when their truck would not start before church, when a minivan made a strange sound outside the grocery store, or when an old farm pickup needed one more winter before giving up for good. He lived at the edge of town in a small white house with chipped shutters, a sagging porch, and a detached garage that smelled of motor oil, pine dust, and black coffee. There was no glowing sign above the driveway, no polished waiting room, no framed awards on the wall where strangers could see them. There was only a workbench scarred by years of honest labor, a radio that played country songs through static, and a little girl who believed her father could fix anything except the sadness he carried when he thought no one was looking. By noon, the 12 cars still sat outside like a crooked metal fence, drawing slow traffic and curious eyes. Ethan had pulled each one just far enough from the road to keep the county from complaining, then covered Lily's bedroom window with an old curtain so she would not have to watch people point. "They are still out there," Lily said from the kitchen table, pushing cereal around her bowl. "I know. Are they laughing at us?" Ethan set a glass of milk beside her and lowered himself into the chair across from her. "Some of them are." Her face fell. "Why are you not mad?" He looked at his hands, at the small cuts along his knuckles, at the flowers still caught near his wrist from breakfast. "Because mad is loud, and loud does not always mean strong." Lily studied him the way children study the people they love, searching for cracks. "Mom used to say you were strong." Ethan's eyes softened. "Your mom said a lot of kind things." On the shelf behind him sat a framed photograph of Emily Walker, smiling beside a blue roadster at a summer car show 10 years earlier. She had been the one who pushed Ethan to leave dealership repair work and step into restoration, the one who said he did not just repair engines, he listened to them. Back then, Ethan's name had traveled farther. Then Maple Ridge. Collectors called from Dallas, Denver, and Chicago. Insurance firms asked him to evaluate rare vehicles after storms and estate disputes. Once, quietly, and without press, he had helped save an old family garage in Iowa by proving its inventory was worth 3 times what the bank claimed. He knew value when others saw rust. He knew history when others saw junk. But all of that ended the night Emily did not come home from a rainy highway outside Springfield. After the funeral, Lily had been 5 years old, sitting on the garage floor with a toy wrench in her lap, asking why cars always took people places they could not come back from. Ethan had closed his restoration shop 1 week later. He sold the lifts, boxed the certificates, folded away the letters from clients with famous last names, and became what the town could understand, a quiet widower who fixed brake lines and changed batteries for enough money to keep the lights on. He did not need to be known. He needed to be present. That afternoon, while Clara Whitmore's video spread across phones and office break rooms, Ethan unlocked an old cabinet in the garage for the first time in years. Inside were leather notebooks, appraisal guides, auction records, and a silver pen Emily had given him with his initials engraved near the clip. He ran his thumb over the letters, then looked back through the open garage door at the black fastback with the Whitmore emblem under the dust. The wind pushed dry leaves across the driveway. A crow landed on the mailbox, watched him, then flew off toward the dealership lights in the distance. Lily appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her pink sweater. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to fix them?" Ethan closed the notebook gently. "I am going to find out why someone wanted them broken." She nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but trusting him anyway. Then she walked over, slipped her small hand into his, and rested her head against his arm. Outside, people still thought the joke belonged to Clara Whitmore. But inside that old garage, beneath fluorescent lights that hummed like a quiet prayer, Ethan Walker had already begun to see the truth hiding under the rust. By sundown, Clara Whitmore's video had crossed the county line. It was on local pages, in group chats, and playing behind the counter at Earl's Diner while coffee cups paused halfway to waiting mouths. The caption was polished enough to sound playful and cruel enough to do its real work. small-town mechanic gets a billionaire challenge. Clara watched the numbers climb from her glass office above Whitmore Motors, the dealership her father had built from a 2-bay repair shop, into 3 acres of showroom lights, service lifts, and flagpoles that snapped in the Missouri wind. Her phone glowed in her hand. 10,000 views. 40,000. 75,000. Grant Mercer stood near the window with his arms folded, smiling down at the rows of unsold cars like they were pieces on a board he had already won. "This is good," he said. "People are talking." Clara did not look up. "They are laughing." "Even better. Laughter sells attention. Does attention pay the bank?" Grant turned, his smile thinning. "Not by itself. But it keeps your name alive while we negotiate." She set the phone on her desk, screen down, as if that could quiet the sound of Ethan Walker's calm voice in her memory. "Someone just dropped off second chances." The words irritated her because they did not behave like an insult. They stayed clean. They stayed steady. Clara hated steady things lately. The dealership was anything but steady. The service department was behind on payroll. The used inventory had been marked down twice. The bank had called 3 times in 1 week, each call more polite and more final than the last. Her father's portrait still hung in the lobby, Thomas Whitmore in rolled sleeves and a grease-stained smile, but the business beneath his picture was beginning to feel like a house with termites in the walls. Grant had an answer for everything. Sell to Ridgeline Auto Group. Take the payout. Protect the family name by letting someone else carry it. He said it gently when others were listening and firmly when they were alone. "Your father built a brand," he told her. "Do not confuse that with a mission." But Clara remembered a different sentence from her father, spoken when she was 12 and sitting on a stack of tires after school. "A car is never just metal, sweetheart. It is where people pray before job interviews, bring babies home, and take one last drive with someone they love." She had believed him then. She was not sure when she stopped. Across town, Ethan did not watch the comments. He watched the footage. He played Clara's video without sound, pausing when each car rolled down the ramp. He enlarged the image on an old laptop with a cracked corner and wrote notes in Emily's leather book. Blue sedan, rear suspension sitting too low for mileage. Green pickup, replacement hood from different year. White station wagon, auction chalk under fresh dirt. Black fastback, Whitmore emblem, likely sealed trunk. Lily sat nearby at the kitchen table, drawing 12 cars with bright yellow headlights. "Why are you watching it again?" she asked. "Because people show the truth when they think they are only showing off." "Is Miss Whitmore bad?" Ethan paused the video on Clara's face. Proud chin. Tired eyes. Smile too practiced to be happy. "I do not know yet." "She made fun of you." "Yes. That is bad." He nodded gently. "It is. But sometimes people are cruel because they are mean, and sometimes they are cruel because they are scared." Lily looked down at her drawing. "Which one is she?" Ethan glanced at the frozen image again. "That is what I am trying to find out." At that same moment, Grant leaned over Clara's desk and tapped the Ridgeline offer with 2 fingers. "The auction is in 5 days. If Walker fails, we use the attention. If he complains, he looks desperate. Either way, we win." Clara looked past him, through the window, toward the dark road that led out to Ethan's side of town. For the first time that day, she did not feel powerful. She felt exposed. And in Ethan's garage, under a single humming light, the black fastback waited with its trunk still locked, holding a secret older than Clara's pride. For the next 72 hours, Ethan Walker let the town talk while he listened to machines. He closed the gate at the end of his gravel drive, hung an old canvas tarp across the fence to keep phones away from Lily, and pulled the first car into the garage just as the evening turned the sky the color of cold steel. The radio on the shelf crackled with an old country station from Colombia, the fluorescent light above the workbench hummed like a tired bee, and the smell of oil, dust, and black coffee settled into the room like memory. Ethan did not rush. He never had. He started with the worst car, a gray sedan everyone else would have sent to the crusher, because the worst things often told the truth first. That one? Lily asked from the doorway, wrapped in her star blanket. That one looks the saddest. Ethan smiled faintly. Then we will give it respect first. Can I help? You can hand me the blue flashlight. The bright one? The honest one. She patted across the concrete and placed it in his palm like she was handing over something sacred. Outside, the town saw rust. Inside, Ethan saw patterns. A fuel line cut too clean to be wear. A battery cable loosened and tucked back like someone wanted failure to look natural. A dashboard panel removed without cracking the clips, then replaced in a hurry. He wrote everything down in Emily's leather notebook with slow, careful strokes. By midnight, the gray sedan started. Not loudly. Not proudly. Just a low, steady idle, like a person clearing their throat after years of being ignored. Lily clapped once, then covered her mouth because the sound felt too big for the hour. Ethan lifted a finger to his lips, smiling. Quiet miracles, he whispered. By morning, 2 cars had been sorted, one running and one labeled for parts that did not belong to it. By the second night, he had found 3 more mismatched components, 2 erased service labels, and a set of auction markings hidden beneath spray-on grime. It was not neglect. It was staging. Someone had dressed valuable machines to look worthless. Clara did not come by during the first day, but she sent a message through Grant. Return the vehicles by Friday if you cannot complete the challenge. Ethan read it once, then set the phone face down. He had no interest in proving himself for a woman who mistook cruelty for confidence. He was following the trail now, and the trail was getting cleaner. With every bolt he turned. On the 3rd night, rain tapped softly on the garage roof. Lily had fallen asleep in an old chair near the wall, her drawing pad open on her lap, 12 crooked cars colored with yellow headlights and smiling grills. Ethan covered her with the star blanket, then walked to the black fastback. The Whitmore emblem near the grill had been polished enough now to catch the light. He had saved it for last because some truths needed silence around them. The trunk lock was original, stiff with age but not ruined. He worked it gently, not forcing, not breaking, just persuading metal to remember its purpose. The latch clicked at 2:17 in the morning. Ethan paused. Rain whispered over the roof. The radio faded into static. He lifted the trunk. Inside, beneath a brittle spare tire cover, sat a sealed metal document box wrapped in oilcloth. Across the top, in faded black marker, were 4 words, Thomas Whitmore, Personal Records. Ethan stood very still. The joke had become a question. The question had become a door. And when he opened that box under the pale garage light, he found the first proof that Clara Whitmore had not inherited a failing dealership. She had inherited a promise someone had tried to bury. By the time dawn reached the garage windows, Ethan Walker had read enough of Thomas Whitmore's records to understand that the 12 cars were not a prank anymore. They were evidence with wheels. The metal box held old purchase agreements, handwritten notes, service ledgers, and a trust document written in the plain, careful language of a man who had spent his life making sure working people were not forgotten. Thomas Whitmore had created a protection fund for mechanics, parts clerks, service writers, and single parents employed by the dealership. He had also placed a restriction on the oldest inventory, including the black fastback and several rare vehicles tied to the company's founding years. They were not supposed to be sold as scrap. They were not supposed to disappear into private auctions. And they were never supposed to be used to make his daughter look desperate enough to surrender the business. Ethan sat at the workbench with Emily's silver pen between his fingers, reading one sentence again and again, no transfer shall be made to any buyer whose intent is liquidation over stewardship. He leaned back slowly. Stewardship. That was a word men like Grant Mercer never used unless it helped them sound clean in front of a bank. Lily came in wearing her school sweatshirt, her hair brushed unevenly on one side. "Daddy, did you sleep?" "A little." "That means no." He smiled without lifting his eyes from the papers. "It means I found something important." "Good important or scary important?" Ethan looked toward the open trunk of the fastback. "Both." Across town, Grant Mercer was already at Whitmore Motors before the sales team arrived. His office door was closed, his blinds were tilted down, and Clara's viral video played silently on his phone while his laptop displayed a list of vehicle identification numbers. He had expected embarrassment. He had expected pressure. He had not expected Ethan Walker to start documenting everything. Grant clicked through the photographs one of the tow drivers had sent him before the cars were delivered. Then he saw the black fastback, trunk still closed, emblem visible beneath dust. His smile vanished. "No," he whispered. A minute later, he was on the phone with a voice as calm as his own fear was sharp. "File a report," he said. "Unauthorized possession, possible parts removal, whatever gets a deputy out there today." The person on the other end hesitated. Grant's tone hardened. "Do it before he opens anything else." At the dealership, Clara stood in the showroom beneath her father's portrait, watching salesmen pretend not to watch her. The lights above the new cars were bright, too bright, making every empty desk look like a confession. Grant approached with practiced concern. "We may have a problem." "What kind?" "Walker is refusing to return the cars. The deadline is not until Friday. He is taking them apart." Clara frowned. "He is fixing them. Or stealing from them." The word landed poorly. Even Clara felt it. She turned toward him. "That is a serious accusation." Grant lowered his voice. "So is bankruptcy." 2 hours later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Ethan's driveway, slow enough for the neighbors to notice and fast enough for the old fear to rise in Lily's face. Ethan saw her at the kitchen window and gave her one small nod, the kind that meant breathe. Deputy Harris stepped out, polite but uncomfortable, holding a clipboard against the wind. Clara arrived seconds later in her black SUV, her face pale beneath the polished calm. Grant stood behind her, looking satisfied until Ethan opened the garage. The gray sedan idled softly. The green pickup's hood was raised, its parts labeled cleanly on white tags. The white station wagon sat washed, documented, and shining under the fluorescent lights. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was stripped. Nothing looked like theft. Ethan handed Deputy Harris a folder. Every part removed, every part replaced, every photograph before and after, every serial number logged. Grant stepped forward. "That does not explain why he had no authorization to open private property." Ethan turned to Clara, not Grant. "You signed the delivery release. You gave me the challenge in writing. Your envelope is in that folder." Clara's mouth opened, then closed. Deputy Harris flipped through the pages, his brows pulling together. "Mr. Mercer, this looks organized." "Organized theft is still theft." Ethan reached into the metal box and removed one yellowed ledger page sealed in a clear sleeve. "Then maybe you can explain why 3 of these cars were marked for scrap 2 weeks before Ms. Whitmore approved any disposal." Silence moved through the garage like cold water. Clara took the page with trembling fingers. At the bottom was her father's signature, and beside it, a note she had never seen: "Preserve until Clara is ready." She looked at Grant, and for the first time, he did not look like an advisor. He looked like a man standing too close to a locked door that had just opened. Ethan's voice stayed low, steady, almost merciful. "Someone did not dump junk at my house, Ms. Whitmore. Someone tried to hide your father's truth in plain sight. Clara Whitmore did not speak on the drive back to the dealership. Grant sat beside her in the passenger seat, explaining, correcting, smoothing, doing what he always did when a crack appeared in the story he had built around her life. Old papers can be misunderstood, he said. Your father signed thousands of documents. Clara kept both hands on the steering wheel. That note was his handwriting. Sentiment, Clara. Not strategy. Do not call my father sentiment. The words came out quietly, but they were sharp enough to make Grant stop talking. Rain began before they reached Whitmore Motors, soft at first, then steady, streaking the windshield and turning the dealership lights into blurred gold across the pavement. Clara parked beneath the service awning and looked through the glass doors at her father's portrait in the lobby. For years, she had walked past it like a decoration. Now it looked back at her like a question. That evening, after the employees left and Grant locked himself in his office, Clara found the old storage room behind the parts counter. She had not opened it since the month after the funeral. It smelled like cardboard, tire rubber, and the cedar chips her father used to keep in a coffee can to fight dampness. She pulled chain after chain under a bare bulb until the room filled with tired yellow light. Boxes lined the shelves, each one labeled in Thomas Whitmore's square handwriting. Payroll Christmas bonuses. Training certificates. Customer thank you letters. Clara opened the last box slowly and found photographs of mechanics standing beside restored cars, single mothers receiving tool grants, high school graduates in Whitmore uniforms grinning beside her father. In one envelope, she found a picture of herself at 12 years old, sitting on a stack of tires with grease on her cheek, laughing while her father held up a carburetor like a trophy. The sight of it broke something cleanly, not loudly. She sat on the concrete floor and covered her mouth with one hand, not because she was ashamed to cry, but because the building felt too sacred for noise. Across town, Ethan's garage glowed through the rain like a lantern at the edge of a dark field. Lily slept upstairs, safe now, with the sheriff's visit already softened into one more strange adult thing she would understand later. Ethan stood over the black fastback, sorting the remaining records by date. When headlights swept across the garage wall, he did not look surprised. Clara stepped in without her cream coat, wearing jeans, rain on her hair, and a face stripped of its showroom armor. I did not know, she said. Ethan slid one document into a folder. I believe that. You should not. Why? Because I used you. He looked at her then, not coldly, not warmly, just truthfully. Yes. Clara swallowed. I made you small so I could feel in control. Yes. And you still helped me. The rain filled the silence between them, tapping the roof, dripping from the eaves, whispering through the gravel outside. Ethan glanced toward the house, where one upstairs window held a faint nightlight glow. I did not help you because you deserved it, he said. I helped because your father built something worth protecting, and because my daughter was watching. Clara's eyes moved to Lily's drawing on the workbench, the 12 cars with yellow headlights and smiling grills. Beneath them, in uneven pencil letters, Lily had written, Daddy fixes things people give up on. Clara touched the edge of the paper but did not pick it up. I thought they were junk, she whispered. Ethan returned to the fastback and placed one palm on the fender. A lot of people say that when they do not want to admit they stopped looking closely. She turned toward him, rain still slipping from her sleeve. What happens now? Ethan opened another folder and revealed copies of bank notices, auction schedules, and a thin pattern of signatures tied to Grant Mercer. Now we stop treating this like embarrassment and start treating it like math. Can you prove what he did? Enough to slow him down. And if he is already too far ahead? Ethan's voice stayed calm, but something firm moved beneath it, older than pride and quieter than anger. Then we buy time. Clara looked at him, confused. With what money? He closed Emily's notebook gently, the silver pen resting across the cover. For the first time, Clara noticed the name stamped at the bottom of several appraisal forms, Walker Legacy Restoration Fund. Ethan did not explain it yet. He only turned back to the 12 cars, their polished edges catching the garage light one by one. Second chances are expensive, he said softly. But losing the truth costs more. The auction was scheduled for Friday at 4 o'clock, but by 3:30 the Whitmore Motors showroom already felt like a courtroom wearing polished shoes. Bank representatives stood near the coffee station with leather folders tucked under their arms. Ridgeline Auto Group executives gathered beside the newest trucks, speaking in low voices that sounded polite only because money had trained them well. Employees lingered behind desks they feared would not belong to them by Monday. Outside, rainwater still clung to the asphalt in silver patches, and the American flag above the lot snapped in a hard Missouri wind. Clara Whitmore stood near the front counter in a navy blazer, her face composed, her hands folded, her heart moving too fast beneath all that discipline. Grant Mercer moved through the room like a host at his own celebration. "We keep this clean," he told her. "No emotion. No speeches. We accept the Ridgeline bid, satisfy the bank, and walk away with dignity." Clara looked at him. "That word sounds strange coming from you." Grant's smile held, but the warmth left it. "Be careful, Clara. Sentiment already cost your father enough." Before she could answer, the glass doors opened, and Ethan Walker stepped inside with Lily at his side. He wore his old brown work jacket, clean jeans, and boots that still carried a faint line of garage dust around the soles. Lily held a manila envelope against her chest with both hands, serious as a child carrying a school project she had practiced all night. The room noticed them in pieces. First the employees. Then the bankers. Then Ridgeline. Then Grant, whose face tightened so quickly it almost looked like pain. "Well," Grant said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "if it is not the town mechanic. Come to buy a hubcap?" A few nervous laughs appeared and died just as fast. Ethan did not look at the people laughing. He looked at Clara. "I came to return something." Grant stepped toward him. "This is a private financial proceeding." "Then it should not have public lies in it." Clara's breath caught. "Ethan." He nodded once to Lily, and she walked to Clara with the envelope. Her small shoes made soft taps against the showroom tile. Clara took it gently, as if the paper might break. Inside were copies of Thomas Whitmore's trust documents, vehicle ledgers, restoration restrictions, employee protection clauses, and photographs of the 12 cars before and after Ethan had touched them. On top was Lily's drawing, the one with 12 yellow headlights, now carefully taped to a sheet that read, "Nothing here is junk." Clara stared at it longer than she meant to. Grant laughed through his nose. "This is charming, but irrelevant." Ethan turned to the bank representatives. "Is it irrelevant that protected company assets were mislabeled as scrap and moved outside inventory controls?" The older banker frowned. "What assets?" Grant spoke quickly. "Old vehicles with no meaningful market value." Ethan reached into his jacket and removed a thin appraisal packet. "The black fastback alone is a Whitmore Motors Founder Edition with documented provenance. Conservative value, $180,000 before full restoration. The green pickup has a factory package that puts it above $90,000. The white wagon belonged to the original service fleet and is tied to promotional materials your loan documents list as historical brand collateral." The room changed temperature without the air moving. One Ridgeline executive stopped whispering. A service manager near the back lowered his coffee cup. Grant's smile collapsed into something harder. "You are making guesses." Ethan placed Emily's silver pen on top of the packet. "No. I am making records." Clara flipped through the pages, her eyes shining now, not with embarrassment, but with recognition. Her father had not left her ruins. He had left her proof. Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You have no standing here." Ethan looked at him with the same quiet patience he had shown in his driveway. "Not yet." The banker adjusted his glasses. "What does that mean, Mr. Walker?" Ethan opened the final folder and slid one page across the counter. "It means before this auction began, I submitted an emergency purchase offer for the distressed note through Walker Legacy Restoration Fund." Grant froze. Clara looked up slowly. The showroom, with all its glass and chrome and expensive light, fell into a silence so complete that everyone heard the paper settle against the counter. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not smile. He simply stood beside his daughter and let the truth arrive on its own feet. "I am not here to bid on a hubcap," he said. "I am here to stop a good man's life work from being sold for parts." For one long moment, no one in the showroom moved. The bank representative stared at the emergency purchase offer as if the numbers had rearranged themselves while they were looking. Ridgeline's executives stopped smiling. The service technicians along the back wall stood straighter, their faces caught between hope and disbelief. Grant Mercer was the only one who moved too quickly, reaching for the paper with a sharp breath. "This is not valid," he said. "It is incomplete." Ethan placed a second folder beside the first. "It is complete. You cannot simply walk in here with a fund nobody has heard of and interfere with a secured transaction." Ethan's voice stayed low. "The bank heard of it this morning." The older banker cleared his throat, uncomfortable but clear. "Mr. Walker's fund provided proof of liquidity and submitted a purchase agreement for the distressed note. Pending final signatures, the Ridgeline transfer is paused." Grant turned on him. "Paused?" Clara looked from the banker to Ethan, her face pale, her eyes bright with the shock of a person watching the floor return beneath her feet. "You bought the debt," she whispered. Ethan did not answer like a man enjoying victory. He answered like a father explaining why he had fixed a porch step before someone got hurt. "I bought time." Grant laughed once, but it cracked in the middle. "This is absurd." "He is a mechanic." Lily, still beside Ethan, looked up and said softly, "He fixes things." No one laughed. "Not this time." Clara stepped closer to the counter, one hand resting on her father's papers. "Why did you not tell me?" Ethan looked at the portrait of Thomas Whitmore hanging beyond the showroom lights, then back at Clara. "Because if I told you too early, you might have thought I was saving you from shame." "I was not." "Then what were you doing?" "I was saving the truth from being sold before you were ready to stand with it." The word settled over her with a weight no money could lift. Grant's face tightened, and for the first time his polish failed him. "You have no idea what you are stepping into. This place is buried in liabilities." Ethan nodded. "Some real. Some manufactured." He opened the last section of the file and placed copies of internal transfer records on the counter, each one marked with dates, signatures, and vehicle identification numbers that matched the cars he had restored in his garage. 3 vehicles were moved off book. 2 were undervalued by more than 70%. Historical assets were classified as disposal inventory. Employee fund documents were removed from active records. And the company Ridgeline planned to purchase through has a registered agent connected to your private consulting account. The room did not gasp. It went deeper than that. It went silent in the way a church falls silent after the first note of a hymn everybody remembers. Grant stared at the papers. "That is not proof." The banker took the copies slowly. "It is enough to trigger review." A Ridgeline executive stepped back from the counter as if distance could protect him from the smell of trouble. Clara turned toward Grant, and all the years of trusting him seemed to leave her face one layer at a time. "You told me my father left me a sinking ship." Grant lifted his hands. "He did." "No," she said, her voice quiet but no longer weak. "You drilled holes in it and handed me a bucket." Ethan lowered his eyes for a moment, not to hide, but to give her the dignity of owning the sentence herself. Deputy Harris entered through the glass doors then, followed by a county financial investigator Clara recognized from town meetings. No one rushed. No one shouted. Papers were requested. Offices were opened. Grant was asked to step aside and answer questions in a private room near the service department. His expensive shoes clicked against the tile, but the sound no longer carried authority. When the door closed behind him, Clara stood in the center of the dealership her father had built, surrounded by employees who had almost lost their livelihoods, bankers who had almost missed the truth, and a single dad she had tried to humiliate before she understood his grace. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan looked down at Lily, then at the 12 car keys lined in a small row on the counter. "Now you decide whether this place becomes a monument to pride or a home for second chances." Clara picked up her father's old service badge from the folder and held it against her palm. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. "Will you help me?" Ethan waited just long enough for the room to feel the mercy in his answer. "I already started." 3 months later, the sign above the dealership no longer looked like a crown. It looked like a welcome. Whitmore Motors had become Whitmore and Walker Restoration House, and beneath the new lettering, in smaller blue paint, were the words Thomas Whitmore Training Program for Working Families. The chrome towers and cold showroom music were gone. In their place came open service bays, warm coffee near the front desk, old photographs on the walls, and a row of tool benches where single parents, veterans, high school graduates, and former employees learned the kind of work that gave a person back their shoulders. Clara Whitmore arrived before sunrise most mornings now, not in heels that clicked like punctuation, but in work boots with scuffed toes and a denim jacket with her name stitched above the pocket. The first week, she burned coffee, misplaced invoices, and asked where the torque wrenches were kept. The second week, she learned to listen before speaking. By the third, the mechanics stopped lowering their voices when she walked by. Respect did not return all at once. It came back like an engine after a careful rebuild, one honest turn at a time. Ethan Walker never moved into the glass office upstairs. He gave it to payroll and kept a small desk beside the service entrance, where he could hear engines start, customers laugh, and Lily doing homework near the parts counter with a pencil tucked behind her ear. The 12 cars were restored slowly, not as trophies, but as lessons. Each one received a small brass plate with a single word: grace, truth, mercy, courage, dignity, patience, honor, faith, hope, respect, redemption, and second chance. The black fastback, the Founder Edition, was placed in the center of the showroom under soft lights. Its paint shone deep as midnight, its emblem bright again, its trunk empty now except for a copy of Thomas Whitmore's promise sealed behind glass. On the day they reopened, half of Maple Ridge came. Earl brought coffee from the diner. Deputy Harris brought his teenage son to look at the cars. Former employees who had once feared losing everything stood in clean uniforms, shaking hands with customers who remembered when Thomas Whitmore used to keep candy at the service desk for children. Clara stood near the fastback, holding her father's old service badge. She watched Ethan help an elderly woman understand a repair estimate without making her feel foolish. She watched Lily tape her drawing to the wall beside the front counter. "Nothing here is junk." The words were still uneven, still written by a child, and somehow stronger than any slogan Clara had ever paid for. She walked over to Ethan after the crowd thinned and the late afternoon sun stretched gold across the tile. "I made you a joke," she said quietly. Ethan looked toward Lily, who was showing a young boy how to draw headlights. "You made a mistake." Clara swallowed. "A public one. Then make the apology public too." She nodded, walked to the center of the showroom, and faced the employees first, not the cameras, not the customers, not the bankers who had come to see whether the miracle would last. "I thought strength meant control," she said, her voice steady enough to carry. "My father knew better. Ethan Walker knew better. This place will never again measure people by how much money they appear to have, what car they drive, or how quietly they carry their burdens. We will repair machines, but more than that, we will honor people." No one clapped right away. The room simply absorbed it. That silence was not empty. It was full of recognition, full of grace, full of the strange and holy feeling that comes when pride finally steps aside and truth is allowed to breathe. Then one mechanic began clapping. Then another. Then the whole room rose into warm applause that did not feel like noise, but healing. Clara turned back to Ethan with tears in her eyes. "I thought I was bringing trash to your door." Ethan looked at the 12 restored cars, their brass plates glowing beneath the lights, and smiled with the quiet dignity of a man who had never needed revenge to prove his worth. "No," he said. "You brought what still had a chance." Outside, the black fastback started for the first public drive since its restoration, its engine not roaring, not boasting, just humming steady and alive. Lily climbed into the passenger seat, Clara stood in the doorway with her father's badge in her hand, and Ethan eased the car forward into the evening light. Maple Ridge watched in silence as 12 broken stories became 12 second chances, and one single father taught a whole town that dignity does not need to shout to be heard.